His luxury car broke down on a lonely mountain road. But when a mysterious forest girl came to help, the real journey wasn't under the hood. It was straight to his heart. The cold wind howled through the pines as Karan Verma, a sharp-suited single dad and the CEO of a booming tech company, sat inside his stalled luxury SUV, completely stranded. It was supposed to be a short weekend getaway with his 6-year-old daughter, Rui, a chance to escape the boardrooms and the noise of city life. Instead, a mechanical failure on a winding, fog-covered mountain road had left them alone, out of signal, and hours from help. Rui was shivering in the back seat. Karan wrapped her in his coat, trying to stay calm. "This was a mistake," he muttered, checking his phone again. Still no service. He stepped out into the cold, frustration rising. That's when he heard it. Twigs cracking. He spun around. In the mist, a shadow moved closer. Then, out of the forest, stepped a girl, no older than 20, wearing worn boots, a thick shawl, and a curious smile. "You need help?" she asked, her accent soft, her eyes alert. Karan narrowed his eyes. "You live here?" She pointed over the ridge. "My family's cottage is down that trail." Before he could respond, she opened the hood of the SUV with surprising ease. "I know these engines. You city folks always panic too fast," she said with a grin. He watched, stunned, as her fingers moved with confidence over wires and bolts. Within minutes, the headlights blinked back to life. Rui peeked out from the car window, wide-eyed. "Who is she, Daddy?" Karan didn't know what to say, because this girl, this stranger from the woods, had just done what his engineers and assistants often failed to do. But what left him even more speechless was the calm in her voice, the fire in her spirit, and the familiarity in her eyes. Something about her didn't feel new. It felt like a piece of the past he didn't know he was missing. The car roared back to life, but Karan didn't move. Something deeper than gratitude kept his hands off the wheel. Curiosity. Or maybe something more. "You said your family lives nearby?" he asked the girl. She nodded, brushing a smudge of grease off her cheek. "Come warm up. Your little one looks cold." Karan hesitated, then looked at Rui, who gave a hopeful nod. Moments later, they were following the girl through a narrow trail lined with moss and chirping birds. Rui clutched her father's hand, eyes wide with wonder. The path opened into a clearing. There, nestled between thick trees, stood a small wooden cottage, glowing with warm lantern light. Smoke curled gently from the chimney. Inside, the girl's grandmother stirred soup on the stove. "Guests?" she asked with a smile. The girl replied, "Their car broke down." I helped Karan stood awkwardly near the doorway until the grandmother turned to him and paused. Her eyes locked on his. You're Mina's boy, aren't you?" she whispered. Karan's heart skipped. "My mother?" he asked. The old woman nodded, stepping closer. "She used to come here with your father, years ago, before you were even born. This forest was their escape." He blinked in disbelief. He had no memory of this place, but it explained the strange pull he felt, like his feet had walked this trail before. "Wait," Karan turned to the girl. "You knew who I was, didn't you?" The girl looked away. "I wasn't sure, but when you stepped out of that car, you looked just like your mother did." The air went still. "How do you know her?" he asked. The girl reached into a small chest by the window, pulled out a faded photograph. In it, Karen's mother and father, laughing beside a teenage girl. "My mom," the girl said quietly. "Your mother was her best friend." Karan sat down slowly, breath caught. In the middle of nowhere, Helped by a stranger with mountain hands and wild eyes, he had stumbled onto a piece of his own story, one he didn't even know was lost. The fire crackled inside the wooden cottage, casting a golden glow over the mismatched furniture. Rui sat cross-legged on a hand-woven rug, playing with a carved wooden bird the forest girl had given her. Karan watched in silence, his phone still dead, his usual schedule forgotten. He couldn't stop looking at the photograph. His mother, so young, so alive. Laughing beside the forest girl's mother, two women from entirely different worlds, bonded by something clearly deeper than time. "I didn't even know this place existed," Karan said finally. The girl, Vidya, nodded. "Your parents came here every year, until they stopped." He looked up. "You knew my mother well?" "I never met her," Vidya replied. "But my mom spoke of her like a sister, said she was strong, full of questions, and didn't care for social rules, just like you, apparently." Karan chuckled under his breath. "She always did challenge everything." Vidya continued. "Before she passed, my mom said something strange. That one day, someone would return from the city, chasing success, but starved for peace, and he wouldn't know it, but the forest had been waiting for him." Karan stared at the flames, her words ringing in his chest. He'd built everything, money, power, status. But somewhere in that climb, he had forgotten how to feel. And now, in this quiet place where signal didn't reach and ego had no audience, he was remembering what mattered. Rui suddenly ran up to Vidya and tugged at her hand. "Can you come live with us?" she asked innocently. "You make Daddy smile different." Vidya laughed, surprised. Karan turned away, flustered, but something inside him stirred. That night, he sat outside under the stars beside Vidya. "I don't say this often," he murmured, "but thank you for helping me find something I didn't know I was missing." Vidya didn't respond immediately. Instead, she said, "You know, sometimes we fix things that aren't broken, just so we don't have to fix ourselves." He looked at her then, not as a stranger, but as someone who somehow already felt known. Back in the city, the chaos returned. Meetings, deadlines, endless pings on his phone. But something inside Karan had shifted. He looked at Ruhi playing in the apartment's corner and noticed her smile wasn't as full. The sparkle from the mountains had dulled. And so had his own. He kept checking the weather report for the hills. Every day. Until, one Sunday morning, Rui walked up holding a drawing. A little girl in a shawl, standing beside a mountain and a car. "Can we go back to her?" she asked. Karan stared at the sketch for a long time. He didn't say yes. He just packed their bags. Back in the forest. Vidya was pouring water into clay pots when the sound of tires crunching gravel made her look up. The same SUV. But this time? Karan stepped out with a duffel bag. No suit, no laptop, just a man who had made his choice. "I can work remotely," he said simply. "And what about your empire?" Vidya teased. He looked around. "This feels bigger." That night, Karan and Rui moved into a small rental cottage nearby. He enrolled Rui in the local school. He built a solar-powered cabin to code from in the mornings, and in the evenings, he learned how to live again. With Vidya, with silence, with firewood and laughter and fewer screens. And every weekend, the three of them went hiking to the ridge where his parents once stood, where his mother had laughed beside the girl who raised Vidya. It wasn't just a forest anymore. It was a reunion, a healing, a home. 1 year later, people still talk about how Karan Verma disappeared at the peak of his career. But those who visit the hills sometimes find him teaching coding to village kids, or sitting on a wooden bench, hand in hand with the woman who once fixed his car. And unknowingly, his heart Because not all breakdowns need mechanics. Some just need someone wild, kind, and rooted in the earth to remind you where your journey was always meant to end.